Council of Governments. And so I'll repeat all that again. Good morning. For the sake of the recording, this is the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments Board meeting for Friday, August 18th, 2023, scheduled to start at 10 a.m. It is 10 a.m. So we're calling the meeting to order at this point. We're currently 2 people short of a quorum, but we're going to move forward with business that doesn't require a quorum. And then should it be necessary, we can delay briefly until we get a quorum for those items that do require that for voting. So we've convened, and I'm going to postpone briefly on the roll call in hopes that we get 2 more. And I'm going to use a minute or 2 in between for a point of personal privilege, which is those of you who know me know that this is not really my style. I'm more of a black and gray and drab sort of, hide in the background and watch people sort of person. But it occurred to me as I was trying to find a shirt that would match my tan pants that I like, I thought, I wonder what the heck the Council of Governments in Hawaii is doing over the Lahaina fire this year. And maybe it's a good opportunity for us to not discuss or address or anything, but just to maybe make the point that at some point we should be thinking about, if that were to happen, let's say Colotus burned to the ground, or Prosser, or a big piece of West Richmond, or one of our smaller isolated communities, would we have a role? What would that role be? Have we thought about it? And are we prepared, materials and planning wise, to fill in and execute? And I could see where Council of Governments might have a role, especially with interfacing with the state and with the feds and grants and other activities. But candidly, I've always just sort of in the back of my mind said, that's emergency management. And that's probably comes from a little bit of my nuclear power background, where we had a robust nuclear management function. But I don't know how we, the Council of Governments, would fit in if that happened here. So I'm just posing that as an open question for future discussion.
Cool.
Since it's not on the agenda today, and that was the purpose of wearing a shirt. All right, covered that. Any more on the quorum?
One more, and I'm working on it.
Brad, I just thought it was Casual Friday.
Happy Friday every day in my life. Believe that, just watch some of our meetings. So still one short?
Yeah.
Okay, well, next item on the agenda is roll call. If you would handle that for us, Michelle, or delegate.
Josh, if you'd like, I'll handle the roll call since you're running the slides for us today.
Sounds great.
Ben-Franklin Transit, Benton County,
Present.
City of Benton City, City of Connell. I don't think you can. City of Connell, City of Kennewick, and Gretel has just joined us. City of Pasco, City of Prosser, City of Richland,
Present.
City of West Richland,
Kate Moran, present.
not city of Franklin County,
Brad Peck.
Port of Benton, Port of Kennewick,
Present.
and Port of Pasco,
Vicki Gordon.
and then Walla Walla County, and Washtenaw South Central. You do have a quorum, and just by means of update, we do have a new representative from Washtenaw South Central. Brian White has replaced Todd Trepanier. He is not with us today, but will be joining us starting next month. And it looks like Roy Keck has just joined us as well.
And you got a hand up there as well. Or City can wait.
Oh, yes, I did.
So
Gretel, I see you have your hand up. Gretel, can you hear us?
I don't know if she knows that she has her hand up.
Okay, I'll put a. I will, oh, we don't have chat enabled.
No.
So,
So, if she can,
I'll
I
try
don't
to
think she
just-
can hear us and she may be muted.
You texting or you want me to? You got it.
I'm looking to see if I've got her in here.
Okay, well, while we're
I do.
doing that, I know Mr.
I got mine.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sorry.
So, I met Mr. White, the new DOT representative, in past business. Are there any other guests or folks we want to introduce? I realize Mr. White's not a guest, he's a new DOT rep, but any guests?
We do have one guest with us today. And George, if you'd like to introduce yourself, you may.
Well, good morning. My name is George Kress with a C. I'm a new employee of Benton City. I'm their director of planning. Good to be here. Recently I came from the city of Pendleton, where I worked for 5 years for the city. I thought I was retired for a while, but I didn't have to work. I've worked a lot of cities on the west side. Forest Grove. I was also with the Board of Longview for 17 years. And so I have a lot of experience with the County Council of Governments. And I was on the EIB board as supports rep for a long time.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
I'm here.
Well, welcome to the group.
Well, thank you.
All right, any other introductions?
No,
Not hearing anybody online asking to introduce either. So this brings us to the agenda. It was mailed out well in advance. If there are any comments or questions, please now would be the time. And if anyone's so inclined, a motion for approval would be in order, certainly.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the agenda as presented.
This is Kate Moran, I second.
Motion and second for approval of the consent, or excuse me, approval of the agenda as presented. And I think you caught those names.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Comments, questions about the agenda before we vote? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not sure if that was enough votes for a majority, but I heard no opposition, so I'm going to assume unanimous consent and we'll move on. The agenda's been approved. Public comment is next. Any members of the public joining us today that would wish to comment, this is your opportunity. Not aware that we have any.
I'm not aware that we have any either.
Okay, and we'll move on to item 6, which are presentations. Aaron, I believe you're going to lead us today with 5 facts about 2023 WSDOT vehicle miles traveled.
That is
Some of us
correct.
call it the ruck field.
All right, so this month's 5 facts presentation is about the recently released vehicle miles traveled, commonly referred to as VMT. This was a report that was released in 2023 in June of this year. It was, you can go to the next slide, Josh. So this was set forth for WashDOT to explore in 2021. They were directed by the legislature to develop a process for establishing VMT targets, recommend options to achieve said targets, recommend laws and rules to support the reduction of vehicle miles traveled throughout the state, and identify funding requirements for state and local jurisdictions to establish local VMT targets. So this is going to be a very, say, 30,000 foot view of the document and what is pertinent to our region. So with that, with this proviso and the new requirements for vehicle miles traveled, what counties are included and who does this apply to? So you can see on the map on the right side of your screen, the lighter color, the lighter green are the counties not included, and then the darker green are the counties that are included. So what was their threshold for establishing this? It was based upon a population density of 100 people per square mile, or a population of at least 200,000. Or there was an additional criteria of population density of 75 people per square mile, or an annual growth rate of 1.75, which Benton and Franklin County both meet based upon that. And looking at the map, Josh, if you can go back. So looking at the map, based upon where the transportation management areas are within our state. So those would be MPOs that are overseeing populations of 200,000. It corresponds exactly with where these counties are, with the exception of Whatcom County. That's the only one that is not a transportation management area. Thank you, Josh. All right, so with that, with the identified areas, how or what are the best strategies for implementing ways for vehicle miles traveled to be reduced? So land use was identified within the report to be the best way to reduce vehicle miles traveled within your county. On the right side, you can see a table that was taken from the report to show what it means, what the strategies they examined of how you can reduce vehicle miles traveled. So and then here are some examples of what you can do for changing your land use or different code amendments that could be done. So you can rezone or upzone around transit corridors. This would be making making development much more dense around transit hotspots. Code amendments to eliminate parking requirements. Washington State is to consider land use and travel impacts in transportation project approval. And then jurisdictions and counties are asked to provide incentives for infill development. So that would allow for tighter development within urban corridors, as referring to the rezoning and upzoning around the transit corridors. All right, but with all of that, here's some good news. The Benton-Franklin region has reduced our VMT since 2010. So you can see on the right side, there is an excerpt from the report as well. Benton County has slightly increased our VMT over the last 13 years. However, Franklin County has drastically reduced their VMT. So as a region as a whole, we've actually reduced our VMT since 2010. And how is this being tracked? This is being tracked based upon people that have opted into having their vehicle miles traveled tracked. And then also all cars after the year of 2017 are connected. I'm just going to say to a cloud is the easiest way for me to explain that. And your miles are being reported back to a big data server. And then that big data is then sold off, and then it can be used for monitoring vehicle miles traveled. Two questions.
I'm sorry. Question, with the reduction of vehicle miles traveled, does that also correspond to less carbon emissions?
It can, it can be depending on what kind of car it is. So that's another thing, but I would say yes, in a blanket statement.
So first off, Franklin County to be way down when we're the fastest growing county in the state is hard to reconcile. But I think the truth lies in the fact that these data are only coming from participants in the plan, right? The state is not reaching into the post 2017 vehicles that have a data port. They're not reaching into your car and pulling this data out. It's only the people who are participating. That's the only way they can do it. They've got to put a unit, I think, in the OBD port.
Yes and no.
Okay, well, in any case, in a broader context, these data reflect participants.
Yes.
Who are participating arguably because they have a motivation toward this program and toward reducing mileage. So if your data population are people who are programmed or desiring to reduce mileage, then it should not be a surprise really that Franklin County is way down despite being the fastest growing county in the state.
Yeah.
So I think what this really shows, if I might, and then I'll be quiet, is that it shows that for those people who want to reduce mileage, it's possible to do so.
I'll say, or Kate.
Kate,
I'll go to Kate and then
Kate, go ahead, please.
If you would like Aaron to respond, I've got a separate question.
Okay. Brad, I drive a Subaru, so I'll speak to that. Subaru has a program called Starlink, and it's standard in all cars after 2017 that your mileage is then tracked. Subaru makes money on that by selling your data to a big data company.
And you agree that when you buy a car?
That's correct.
Wow.
So and that's standard in all cars after 2017 now.
Well, didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does that Starlink report raw mileage, or does it include mileage when you go to Florida?
I believe it's raw mileage.
Okay.
So-
then the data are questionable. All right.
But
Thanks
that's,
for the reply.
so that's, and I'll get into the next thing, or on slide 5, but that's how they will be tracking data is based upon cars after 2017. However, we know that there are cars older than 2017 that are still on the roadway.
Well, I was going to try and hurry up and go to Kate, but now you've said something that they, presumably the state government,
That's correct.
are going to be tracking this mileage, which just for the participants, or are you talking about for everyone?
It would be for everybody, and like I said, this is still a proposal.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
not.
All right, good. I'm glad you clarified that, because the road usage charge discussion, which is in parallel with
Yes.
this, about charging per mile in lieu of the gas tax or in addition
Yeah.
to, separate but related. Kate, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thank you. You answered part of my question. And Chair Peck, you definitely brought up a concern that I was also thinking myself. And as a Subaru driver myself, I can appreciate what you said, Aaron. My question was, is this solely personally owned vehicles, or does this also include public vehicles like BFT buses, things like that?
That's a good question, Kate, and I can answer that on my next slide, actually.
Perfect.
So how is the VMT target setting being done? So this is being done, it's being recommended that it is a per capita target. So it's not a county by county, it would be a individual per capita. And then light duty and heavy duty vehicle miles traveled to be monitored, but they are not considered within the target setting for our region. So Kate, to your question, it would not take into consideration Benton-Franklin transit buses. It does not take into consideration semi trucks or heavy duty vehicles along those lines. So it would just be single I'm going to say, we'll say, I can't say single occupancy vehicles.
Personally owned vehicles.
Yeah, personally owned vehicles.
Okay, so the light duty and heavy duty are not personally owned vehicles, like delivery vehicles or BFT type vehicles. Is that what you mean by light and heavy duty?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so there currently are no penalties for currently not meeting the vehicle miles traveled targets. So just go ahead.
I really want to keep this moving fast.
Yeah.
There's some questions that we have. How would they penalize us if this is just a test?
They can't,
There's no penalties in the proposal if this were to be adopted statewide. Is that what we mean?
there are currently no proposed, that is, to summarize, yes.
Okay, good enough. Let's keep moving.
So how is this being done? The big data that I've alluded to, it would be a joint purchase with MPOs and RTPOs with the Washington State Department of Transportation. These targets would be set when the RTPOs update their metropolitan transportation plans. So that's, we'll flashback of when we were updating our metropolitan transportation plan. You might have heard me asking, needing updated land use information from the jurisdictions for our travel demand model. That is where the vehicle miles traveled gets set. It's based upon our travel demand model, which our model already has that capability. And then another recommendation within the proviso was that the regional transportation planning organizations certify the transportation elements only if it shows how local jurisdictions are reducing their vehicle miles traveled. With that being said, that is something that is already included within jurisdictions' comprehensive plans. So that's not an additional burden. Jurisdictions already do that with showing how they're going to be improving their level of service and their the strategies they put in place with that. So it would just be simply changing language.
He has a question,
Yeah.
but I have a comment also. I want to clarify this with Aaron in case I am misspeaking, but that first bullet, a joint purchase of big data with WashDOT. I'd like to go on record for our board with this, that as the staff of the RTPOs around the state, the transportation organizations, the state has not adjusted the level of funding that comes to our TPOs to administer these programs on behalf of WashDOT. And then to turn around, and I think the projected potential cost for this big data purchase was going to be 200,000. No,
It would be essentially asking everybody for 10% of their funding.
yes, and they've not adjusted our funding, but basically, oh yes, but take 10% of it and give it back to us to buy this data for this program, that the data may be questionable. We don't know what the percentages are going to be, and it only applies to the larger entities. So that is a question that all of the agency staff are pulling up as well.
Yeah, I think questionable data is one of the bigger understatements I've heard in a while.
And
Because I don't know if it's just Subaru that's selling data or every car manufacturer, but we don't need to go there now.
every car manufacturer does.
That's a question.
One more clarifying thing of what Michelle just alluded to. So this would be expanding for all of our planning areas. So that's, I'm going to use Connell as the example. So Connell would be held to the same standards as to the per capita vehicle miles traveled. As you can see on the screen, you can see a map of our land use and our model network. Our model network only goes to the edge of the urbanized area. So that would be just beyond city of Pasco limits. So we're also going to need to pay for expanding our model network out to Connell to make it a more accurate model, which that pricing is not considered within their proposal as well. So it's going to be an additional burden that we'll have to undertake if this does get approved.
Yes, of course.
Kate, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you. I believe that answered my question. Just want to clarify, Aaron, this map, is this a map that we've created? And if so, I just want to verify this low, medium, and high density, if that's been standardized, or if we're just using the zoning that the individual municipalities have. Because I know for West, our high density is really more like Pasco's medium density based off of the persons per space or per area.
Kate, this is a map from our 2019 CMP. This is meant to show just generalized land use throughout the region.
Right, but I'm just curious, the low, medium, and high density, especially for residential, is that just based off of the zones that municipalities have given, or is that based off of the quantities that the zones have from the municipalities?
It is based off the zoning from each jurisdiction. So if it shows high density in West Richland, it will show high density, even if it is the same as medium density in Pasco.
And it shows zoning, it doesn't show actuality. You can have a
Yes.
high density zone that has low density population. So, all right, thank you,
Gretel, that's
Aaron.
your
That was number 5, right? Gretel, please
Yes.
go ahead.
So am I unmuted? Is this something that we are going to be voting on or have any control? I mean, you're talking about purchasing data, but it's not even necessarily good data that they've collected so far. So this is something we can opt into or out of, other than if you buy a new car after 2017?
I'll answer that question to the best of my ability. So this is a proviso that is going to the legislature this coming session. So this would be something that you would, I would say, speak to our legislatures about to let them know your stance on it. As it comes to the joint purchase of the big data, that would be something that each each RTPO would have to work out with WashDOT. But knowing, and I would, we will eventually have to vote on purchasing the, being a part of the joint purchase. However, it's still up in the air at this point in time.
So Gretel, I'll just close this out on this agenda item because we're on number 5 of 5 facts. But the Washington State Association of Counties has a legislative steering committee, 1 representative from each county. I co-chair that with another commissioner from the west side. We met yesterday to establish our agenda for the upcoming legislative session. This did not come up, but that doesn't mean that counties can't pursue this with legislators. And I would encourage you to connect with your Benton County commissioners and see where they stand on the issue and educate them on what you would like to see the legislature do or not do. I'm going to be doing that for Franklin County and also for the LSC as a whole. So Kate, I'm trying to move ahead, but if you've got another quick comment, please go ahead.
Yes, very quick comment, just to kind of dovetail off of that. This sounds like something also that the Association of Washington Cities would be interested. And our very own Fred Brinks, Mayor Pro Tem for West Richland, is the secretary of AWC and on the legislative committee. So might be good to talk to him about that and talk to the AWC Legislative Council as a whole.
Right, those statewide organizations representing cities and counties actually have significant voice with the legislature, so I couldn't agree more. Okay,
I'm just
next
gonna-
item.
Can I just follow up one real quick on my comment real quick? So just, I guess the only other thing I think that maybe needs to be considered that maybe hasn't is that I bought some new vehicles recently and I was not informed that my information and data is being tracked. I think that there could be some potential lawsuits here for privacy that maybe needs to be addressed as well.
My purchase documents say something in there to that effect. I don't know that, but you're right. There would be some pretty clear privacy violations if you hadn't been noticed.
Yeah.
But I suspect the purchase documents have it in there. You know, that type that takes a magnifier to read. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just saying, I think it's, yeah, I think it's,
Be great if more people knew.
yeah, and potentially violations if somebody wanted to go after it. So I think it's a little contentious. Okay,
I agree. Okay, item 7, consent agenda. We have 3 items in the consent today. One is a voucher summary. It's in page 3 of your packet. The second is approval of minutes from the meeting held July 21st of this year. That's page 4. And the rural revolving loan fund, July 2023 loan balance report, which is page 9. So those documents have all been provided ahead of time. If anyone is inclined, it would certainly be an appropriate time for a motion on the consent agenda. I'm always careful not to say I would entertain a motion because I just hate that phrase. It's not for me to entertain. Anyone can make a motion at any time. So,
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the consent agenda as presented, and if you would like to do some entertainment, that would be welcome.
well, since
I
you know
second full.
you shouldn't ask. This shirt's about the most I can muster, and it would take me a while to recover from this. Okay, so I think I heard a motion, Skip, for approval of the consent is presented, did I?
That's correct.
And a second from myself, Kate.
Kate Moran seconded. Thank you very much. Any questions, comments, or discussion on the consent? I know that's not standard practice. Skip, our parliamentarian, but I don't want anybody to feel like they haven't had a chance to comment. Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any other ayes? Okay, any opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved by majority vote. Please don't ask me to count because I only heard about 6, but there were no nays. So there you go. This brings us to item 8, which is reports. Provided for information discussion is needed. Looks like Aaron, we're right back to you on your MVO Deputy Director report.
Thank you. So the first item, 8A1, is the 2023 Transportation Improvement Program obligation status. So this is our monthly update of how our region is doing on obligating our projects and moving towards our obligation authority target. So this year, our obligation authority target was 5.5 million. As of August 10th, we have obligated 7.6 million. So this places the region over our target by $2 million. That's a good thing. That's good that we're spending money. Next slide, please.
And Aaron, real quick, if we've spent all our money or obligated it, does that increase the chances that we might get more consideration if additional funds become available?
That is correct. So
I want people to know why it's so important and why the work you're doing is so great, because you're keeping us ahead of that.
So as Commissioner Peck just alluded to, we've gone over our target, which is good, and that puts us eligible for reallocation funds. So if Washington State meets or is on track to meet our state target, and let's use Idaho as an example, and Idaho is not on track to meet their target, Washington State can then get reallocation funds from Idaho, and then the MPOs that have already met their target are the ones that would be at the top of the priority list to get reallocation funds. So we are in good position to receive reallocation funds if we do. So these are our 2023 and 2024 projects. All right, and then here is my general update. So this past Wednesday, I did a presentation to the Good Roads Association of Benton, Franklin, and Walla Walla counties and spoke about ongoing planning projects within the regional planning part of the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments, and kind of gave the group a refresher on where the COG has gone over the last 3 years and the changing of tides. Also, BFCOG was called out as an example in the Washington State carbon reduction strategy for our active transportation plan for having, we'll say, above average metrics on what we are already obtaining data on. So things that we're collecting, we were called out as a good example in that. So that was really cool.
Another way to say that is a really awesome team that is excelling and making everybody else like slammers. In case you didn't get that translation.
But yeah, thank you. We also have our carbon reduction program, the CRP call for projects coming up and starting next month. That was something that we talked about earlier in the year, and we worked through some kinks, and it'll be coming forward to the TAC in September, and then to the board to start the process in September as well. And then we've been doing recent and upcoming, or we've been doing a lot of public engagement. So here are some recent and upcoming public engagement events. On August 11th, we were at the Richland Farmers Market. We were also at the West Richland Wednesday on August 9th. We'll be at the Kennewick Farmers Market on August 31st, Pasco Farmers Market on September 9th, and then we'll be at the e-bike expo at Vista Field on September 14th. And then that is a photo of the regional planning team at West Wednesday.
I should get new glasses. I could have sworn that was your party tent at Waterfalls, but
Kate has her hand up.
Kate, go ahead, please. And then I see Ryan's got his hand up. We'll go there next.
Thank you. Yes. First off, I want to say it was really great to see y'all out there in West Richland. I will say that is one of our lower attendance Wednesdays in West. So I'm wondering if there's any way to have just something that maybe could be set out without having a tent there at the next couple of Wednesdays in West, or at other locations where you might not be there with a tent, but we could have just some information set up for folks.
Yeah, that would be great, Kate, and I can get you that information.
We work for
Perfect.
Lexington, you are next, please.
Thank you. I'm curious how it went in Richland at the farmers market, if you got very much engagement, or what the reception was.
Yeah, so we were there on the 11th, and we were there in July. I was told by the individual who runs it in July that it was the busiest one that they've had of the year. It was over 10,000 people. There's a cool heat map that Alex and Priyanka put together that we've been collecting public input about where people perceive congestion versus where the actual, we'll say, our data leads. So seeing the hotspot analysis of that has been really good, and the people at the farmers market have been more than willing to put stickers on maps. So it's been really good.
Nice, thanks for that.
Okay, Aaron, are we still with you?
No.
You've covered all your items?
We're going to the intern project updates. So the first one's with Lizzie.
Okay.
Do you want me to discuss census data or air quality campaign? I don't think that one got updated.
I would
Whatever
talk,
you're gonna report on.
yeah,
Do you have another slide for the air quality?
I do not.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just talk about the air quality campaign. But our last board meeting, we did have a census report that we were working on. So that's what this information is about on the site. So basically just creating a snapshot of the region and everything that are like demographic, housing, economic diversity, right? So just creating a report of comparing of how those have changed over the years. So currently we're still in the data collection stage of that. And then for the air quality campaign, so we are launching a campaign starting in September with International Clean Air Day, which is on September 7th. So one of the roles of the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments as an MPO and RTPO is just to make sure that we're evaluating future emission sources and that our plans and projects accommodate for the air quality outside. And so we are going to be starting that, just aim to educate and inform the community and our local jurisdictions of future emission sources and just make sure that our projects and plans do accommodate for increased air quality or air emissions, I suppose, and that they will get approved for funding by the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. But yeah, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me on that.
Who has a really hard question? Okay, well, apparently you answered everybody's questions without them even asking. Thank you. So I guess we move on now to congestion management process.
Yes. So yeah, the BFCOG has been working on updating the regional congestion management process since June now. And so currently we are at the stage of incorporating professional expertise in the CMP and its data. And so we are holding monthly working group meetings, which will be through September with partner agencies and jurisdictions. And the most recent working group meeting was yesterday, and that included a lot of the quantitative data analysis that we are undertaking for defining the CMP network and the CMP corridors. Then, as public engagement is also an equally important part of the CMP, we are continuing our public engagement efforts for gaining community feedback and input. So we already had two, like Aaron mentioned in his update, we have had 2 events in the Richmond Farmers Market in July, one at West Wednesdays in August, and we have also planned to attend farmers markets in Pasco and Kennewick in the upcoming weeks. The survey that we released, the public survey on congestion, is being received very well. We have had a total of 101 responses so far as of yesterday. The survey is open through September 30th, so September end. And the data that we get from that survey is also being used as indicative checks for whether the data that we get quantitatively from different data sets overlaps with what the community also thinks. And the picture that you see on the right is the map, the interactive map activity that we have at our public engagement events. So it's basically we ask anyone who stops by to put a sticker wherever they think congestion is the worst. And then this has been actually a really great way to get quick feedback from the community. And Alex made a really great map just to get an idea of where the most congested spots people have thought so far are.
Well, I think anyone who lives here can validate that map. Pretty darn accurate. I'll just ask for the sake of the group, how was the turnout, the participation at the 2 public events you went to at Richland and West Richland?
In the engagement, the booth that we had in the Richland Farmers Market got a lot more people coming in, I think just because of the scale of that market. Right. So, and then the West Wednesdays one was also, there were a lot of little kids who stopped by. We had bingo cards for them, which had traffic signs and things that you see, and they had to mark off things that they see around them. So okay. Yeah, we have had a great turnout so far, and looking forward to it.
Great. Any questions on the congestion management process update?
Yes, in case of any questions, again, feel free to reach me or Alex.
Okay, well, great update. Thank you. So let's see.
Hi, that's me. I'm on the screen virtually, but I'm Daisy, regional planning intern, and I'm working on the regional safe routes to school program. The plan generally will improve the mobility and safety of children to walk, bike, and roll to school, and enable long-term collaboration across multiple jurisdictions, as well as encourage active transportation by providing a framework for the vision, goals, and action steps to be implemented throughout the region. So I think publicly we've been using on our flyers, which you guys have attached in the packet. The main goal is to make it safer, easier, and more fun for kids to walk and bike to school. And then more internally, having a regional Safe Routes to School plan will allow jurisdictions to apply for the Safe Roads and Streets for All grant. So it'll create more ability for infrastructure improvements surrounding schools. Our current progress, as we talked about in the last board meeting, we contacted over 60 individuals to participate in the working group, and we held our first meeting on July 25th. It was very well attended with lots of stakeholders throughout the region. And we published our Safe Routes to School survey on August 4th, and it's being promoted by us, local jurisdictions, and school districts. So since August 4th, we've received about 82 responses. That was definitely helped out by the Richland School District, sent it out to all parents and students. So it's getting a lot of reception through that. And the survey will be open to the end of December. So we have quite a bit of time to reach as many parents and students and teachers as possible. We're also conducting stakeholder interviews throughout August and September. We have met with one teacher of Richland School District, and we are meeting with the superintendent of Prosser on Tuesday, as well as someone from Benton-Franklin Transit. And then for some upcoming events, we have our second working group meeting on August 29th. If any of you want to join, you are welcome. We're holding some pedestrian and bicycle events at school open houses, using things like the traffic garden, as well as just promoting the survey, which is kind of top priority. We will be doing Safe Routes to School presentations for all of the school boards. We have our first Safe Routes to School presentation scheduled for the Prosser School Board in September. And lastly, we're holding a Safe Routes to School logo contest across the 7 school districts. We're just starting to kind of get this out, but the goal is to really get the students involved and kind of raise awareness of what Safe Routes to School is. Preliminary results of the survey show that I think about 70% of parents didn't know what Safe Routes to School programs were. So we really just want to make sure the kids are aware of Safe Routes to School and kind of increase the culture around active transportation in the school system. If you have any questions, I'm open to answer.
Well, Daisy, first off, thanks for joining us all the way from Walla Walla this morning. I hope your weather's as great as ours. And I see we have a question from Mr. Press.
Thank you for doing this type of work. Will the surveys and the interviews be used for assessments from the individual schools when they're taking a look at their Safe Route to School needs for projects?
Yes, I can answer your question in a few ways. The survey and the interviews are really supposed to inform the plan development, the written plan development, where we will have strategies and recommendations for infrastructure improvements. And so the stakeholder interviews are really ground truthing. Maybe we already know that there's no sidewalks in this given vicinity, and we know that's a problem. And so when we're making a safe route, we have a GIS map that we're showing to the stakeholders, and we really just want to ground truth it with people who know the area and know the barriers that kids and parents kind of see when they're trying to get to school actively. And so we are taking all that information into account regarding the recommendations and strategies that we will end up proposing in the action plan. Does that answer your question?
That helps, thank you.
Other questions for Daisy? Okay, I do have one. It's more a request than a question. That's once you've done more of the stakeholder interviews, I'd really love for you to come back and give us some insight as to how this program is perceived by the superintendents and the principals. Obviously, it has the potential to impact busing and cost. Obviously, safety is the primary focus. It's just interesting to see how all those pieces come together and how the school leadership views it.
Absolutely. And I think just preliminary, the feedback has been really positive. I've been able to get in contact with a lot of the school districts and superintendents, and everyone's been pretty responsive, which I was hesitant. I didn't know if that would be the case, but it has been. So, but I will definitely come back and give you a full report.
Okay, thank you. I see your hands up if you'd like to go.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because we've gotten some of these questions at the city level, but you know, those neighborhoods in terms of walkability that don't have sidewalks, you know, installed in them, I guess I'm just wondering if there was any feedback or thought process on that. Obviously, on a city level, it's pretty multi-leveled in terms of what that means, no sewer, storm drain, you know, how much room you have and that sort of thing. So I guess I'd be interested too in what they think the solutions are in lieu of simply just putting sidewalks all throughout the city, which may or may not be feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you point out, I think Erin can speak to this a little bit more, maybe Michelle as well. But I think there's a lot of nuances too. I mean, I was saying it kind of blanketly, but there are a lot of nuances and, you know, various hoops to jump through regarding infrastructure improvements, such as sidewalks. So I think there's a lot more to consider here. And that is something we have people in capital projects and in transportation and public works and engineering in the working group. So we really are touching on all of these different points that you address to make sure that we can have that expertise available to us. Erin or Michelle, did you want to add to that?
Yes. What I was going to add is that we don't have one in the PowerPoint, but I know I've seen a sample of a preferred safe route to school map for a single school that shows some of those areas where maybe there it is not sidewalk or other issues on a per school basis. And part of to answer all of those questions, once the plans are put together, that becomes a tool that whether it's the schools, the cities, the county, whomever, can point back to this plan and say, these are areas identified as necessary for safety, and assist them in supporting grant applications for other funding programs to help bridge some of those gaps in the future too.
Okay. Thank you, Daisy. Appreciate it. I think that takes us back to Lizzie, if I remember, on social media.
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad this one updated at least. So one of the priorities that the COG has been doing is just making sure to engage and educate the public on our regional planning processes, as well as any projects that we are currently working on. That's why we have this CMP, and we've been going out to the farmers markets and specific across the school flyers. So just working on getting people aware of what we're doing. So there's a lot of concentrated effort just to increase the amount of content that we have published on our social platforms and just be more active in general with our regional community. So these are just some statistics of what we've seen since we've started to do more of that active effort since June 1st. So Facebook, we have over 836 new followers. We've reached over 28 new people. Yeah, Facebook reaches 28, and then as of August, we have even more. So we have 4,744 Facebook reach and 883 new followers. And then for Instagram, we didn't have an account at all, so then we started that, and we have 88 new followers as of August 11th. LinkedIn, same thing. We've got 748 impressions, 240 profile visits in June 3rd, and then in July we had 553 impressions with 204 profile visits. And then for LinkedIn, from June to August, we've had 15 new followers, 11 requests, and 83 reactions. So happy to keep reporting on that as we see our feed and other people who are following us grow. Even though we're very excited and looking forward to.
I'd like to add that Lizzie has in her posts, for example, there's a reminder that goes out the Monday of the week of the board meeting that we've got a board meeting coming up, a post afterward, which is the high points of things that were covered in the meeting, some good engagement there. So it's nice to see that. So thank you.
Just had a thought on how we could really boost those numbers. You could post Erin's comments about the sales of your vehicle data.
Did you know?
just 5 facts. Did you know?
I did write that down as one of the things we might want to mention.
Please coordinate with Michelle before you do that. Okay, let's see, where does that bring us? We're down to item B, local government resources director report. Mr. Radcott.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Yeah, just continuing our work with notices of funding opportunities from EDA, from Department of Commerce, from anyone that has money to give to any of our member organizations in the region. I reported last month on the EDA Tech Hubs opportunity, working with some of our partners in TriDec and the Regional Chamber of Commerce. We tried to cultivate some interest in at least a planning grant. Did not get collective interest and collaborative interest on that, so we let that pass. However, as reported last month, the Port of Benton is pursuing a larger conglomerate pursuit of an actual tech hubs designation through the Economic Development Administration. And so BFCOG is able to provide support for that. We helped them with some mapping and demographic information last week as they rounded out their application. We will continue working with the My Tri 2030 Agricultural Council, as well as just our general partners in the community to really have a focus on technology and agribusiness as we continue looking for other opportunities for our member communities. We have just general NOFOs funding opportunities coming out weekly. We've actually been working as a team here through the COG to distill some of those opportunities. Some of the opportunities may not be relevant to our communities here. They might be for higher education. They might be grant opportunities for the arts. So we're looking to really see what's applicable to our member communities. Two of them of note came out last week. One is electric vehicle charging stations, which is a facility requirement for new commercial buildings and government facilities. And also there is some climate planning grants from the State Department of Commerce. These dovetail with some new rules for comprehensive plans and growth management areas to have certain areas dictating towards climate change, and, some transportation, some land use issues around climate change. The state is offering funding to help jurisdictions pay for some of those studies to help boost and meet that requirement. Our regional jurisdictions, so Benton-Franklin counties, as well as our conglomeration of cities, have to meet that requirement in 2026 for their comprehensive plans. So we're working to see what's applicable and if any communities want some help with planning on that as well.
So
any questions on
NOFO, notice of funding opportunity.
Yes.
I couldn't begin to draw a straight line between the two at this point, but at the start of the meeting, I was talking about where would the council governments fit in a disaster response scenario, and I could see that it might be being a vehicle to accelerate funding, to go with private insurance, to help those small businesses get back up on their feet, get back operating, probably in new locations if it's a mass fire, for example. But would appreciate you just sort of add that to your process and your thinking that that's a whole nother category where we may be able to find some funding opportunities.
I would just speak to that is exactly what we did with the funding from EDA related to COVID-19. Whether it was a natural or man-made disaster or illness, that plan that was put together and is part of our SEDS would be part of that. And it does address emergency management, funding coordination, who the partners in the community are. So the basis of that is there, but it was very COVID focused. And so I think there's opportunities to use some other disaster examples like Hawaii to go back and see, is it robust enough in the event there was a disaster?
Sure. So we've already got a big head start on it, which is great.
Yes.
And maybe it's just a matter of adding, like Michelle suggested. Great. And you've actually briefed me on that before and I forgot. So thank you.
right to your left?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Quick question, I'm sorry. Does that help pay for like a continuation of operations planning? That's a food plan for communities. Do you know what that is?
Go ahead.
I do know what that is. I'm aware of that, having worked through disasters before in the career and through COVID-19. I will find out that information for you, George. See, I do not have that right now, just to see what our plans have in that place, but
Because that can
there are certain opportunities for that. But a lot of
experiments can play into that on resiliency of coming back and operating the community, they ask those questions.
Great.
Gretel, please, I see your hand. Please go ahead. I think you might be muted.
I would like to have more information if you could send that to me, I guess, on one, what the potential funding, I guess, could look like for the EV charging information, because as a builder and also working at the city, you know, we keep getting these mandates handed down to support the state climate change requirements, but these are massive burdens on builders and developers as well as building departments, because they pass these mandates, but they don't send adequate information. They don't fully even inform different jurisdictions of what that means, what that looks like. It's very confusing for everyone, and there's a lot of time spent trying to work their way through it. So I guess if there was funding that could come back as we all try to, you know, work through these things, but in the next energy code that's supposed to come out at the end of October, there's supposed to be 30% of your parking spaces have to be in some way, shape, or form ready for EV charging stations. 10% will have to be fully installed, ready to go. Another 10% will have at least infrastructure to it with, again, there's panels in the building that you have to pull enough electricity to. You have to pay for that. Who's paying for all of these? It's such a ill thought through mandate. It's kind of crazy. And I think that some information needs to go back, that maybe they need to put some money towards actually, I mean, addressing it a little bit more or researching a little bit more, but it's overwhelming and it's not clear at all. And I know that part of the conversation on some of the building code council oversight, you know, could even lead to some of this at some point in time, because the jurisdictions are handling it differently, because there isn't one clear path for how to handle it. So anyways, if that's somewhat under our purview, let me know who I need to talk to let them know how uncomfortable that is and frustrating, because it's not even clear, even being something we can't get around. It's murky at best.
Yeah, I don't know to what extent it's under our purview, but it certainly is under the purview of the legislature. And again, back to your counties, please encourage them to engage with state legislators locally and across the state and help educate them on what the unintended consequences of these well-intended actions can be. It can be very expensive.
And as far as the grant, we'll be happy to provide that information directly to our member communities, including city and county.
Sure. So I think that ARPA does it.
Yes, just continuation on our ARPA funding, the economic resiliency work that we are working on with Benton and Franklin counties. So continued work with staff, continued meeting and cooperation, communication to see where the COG can fill in as far as, you know, identification of recovery and development projects in each county, technical assistance, and just general economic development planning efforts. Meeting with representatives from both counties. There's some discussion on facilities and if there's any EDA grants to help with county facilities. The recently accepted master plan for the Benton-Franklin, Benton County Fairgrounds can certainly pave the way to some opportunities and work with EDA and the staff on that to see how we can help just benefit some of the economic growth here in the communities. There is the targeted urban area, but city of Richland that Benton County is working on as well. So providing some support there and really just how we can help bridge the gap between county staff and some of the cities as well. So we're continually working on that and looking through different opportunities to work through on that. So any questions on the ARPAs?
Not seeing any questions. I just had a note. You know, counties, not all, but Franklin and I think Benton as well, get the 0.09 rebate from the state government, you know, of your sales tax. The first 6.5% goes straight to the government. Certain counties get 0.09 or just less than 1/10 back. And those funds are intended not to be used necessarily by the unincorporated county, but all the entities in the county, including the cities. And I know you know that, but this is for the benefit of everybody. And there's a requirement to have an economic development plan and for those funds to be used for things in that plan. So if that's not happening in your community, in your city, or in your county, please be aware that those funds are available and get your interest into that economic development plan so that you're eligible for those funds, which can be sizable.
Yes, very much. Thank you. All right, and then just the general economic development district updates. We are working through our annual SEDS, the Community Economic Development Strategy Update. We met earlier this week with our small committee, which is a staff and some of our partners with the Regional Chamber and TRIDEC, to go through some of the amendments that we put in, including a large expansion to the evaluation section. Those changes were accepted by the staff, so we'll be incorporating that into more or less a we'll call it a draft version 2 document, and we'll be providing a preview and presentation to the BFCOG board next month on September 15th. We also have this group to talk a little bit about just some of the expansions. This document has been more or less a check the box requirement from the EDA for our economic development district. We did have some great discussion on how we could make it more relevant to the region and our member communities. And a little bit more strategy on the projects lists that we include with the SEDS document as well. So I think we got some great momentum with that document. We'll be looking forward to presenting that to the board next month. Just some notes, even during the meeting just now in my presentation, we'll talk a little bit about the resiliency plan as one of the appendix to SEDS and provide a little bit more of an update on that. And yeah, looking forward to that presentation and a good discussion next month. So that's all from my my corner of the COG. Unless there's any questions.
Questions? Okay, well,
Thank you.
then thank you. And it's time for us to hear from our executive director.
You guys are so fortunate. My report is very short. To circle back on the Mid-Columbia Building Appeals Commission, I did meet with the city managers, county administrators group. And of course, when we say that, it includes West Richland's mayor. And their recommendation is that the appeals commission is no longer necessary. The jurisdictions are utilizing hearing examiners for this purpose. They feel like there are other resources available, and it's just not necessary to have another layer of bureaucracy in order to deal with that. The question has been raised, however, by Mr. Nichols, who was here last month, that the hearing examiner does not meet the statutory requirements for construction industry experts that the RCW requires. So there is still a lingering question about that out there, but the feedback from our jurisdiction staff was that they did not feel like it was necessary, and they feel like what needs to be met is being met. I need to do a little bit of research now to find out if there's a specific action that needs to be taken. If the decision is to in fact dissolve the appeals commission, who do we have to go to do that, and by whom? For example, we do not, as the Council of Governments, have an interlocal with the jurisdictions to administer this appeals commission. It was formed in 1974 as a commission with the state. So I'm just not exactly sure how we unravel that ball of yarn yet. So we need to do a little bit more research, but I'll bring back information either in September or October for that. Next. Our audit has begun, is well underway. We're having our entrance conference on August 22nd at 11. You all got an invitation to that. I expect that will be 15 minutes where the auditors tell us, yes, we're doing your audit. These are the things we're going to look at. Do you have any questions? So don't feel bad if that doesn't work into your schedule to be there for that. It's just part of the official process.
These are very exciting. You should drop everything and be sure you're there.
Yeah. We are well underway in both the federal single audit and the financial audit. They will both, they have to be completed by September 15th, and we're tracking very well for that. Once that's done, they will then move on to our accountability audit, and that will begin at the end of September. Bylaws and interlocal implementation, again, at the same meeting with the administrators and managers. We just talked about a review of where the governing documents actually ended up, what was actually changed. And it's now in the court of each of our jurisdictions to ratify the amended interlocal agreement. And so if you have not, as board members, seen or heard anything about that coming up on your individual meeting schedules, please check with your administrator or manager or let me know, so we can just make sure that we get that through the process with everybody. Just a heads up, September's board meeting is a very full agenda, so please be prepared that the meeting will in fact take the entire 2 hours that we put on the calendar. There are just a lot of moving parts for September, including 2024 budget, a presentation about the future regional vision collaboration, that evolution of MITRI, the SEDS update that Zach mentioned, among other things. Last thing, I didn't put it on the slides, but related to the brownfield program, I did update the managers, administrators about both broadband and brownfields. Just make sure everybody was aware. But if we have expended 70% of our brownfields grant from EPA, remember that was $600,000 over 3 years. Once we hit that 70% point, we become eligible to reapply for new funding under EPA to renew, basically continue that program. That the application deadline or the timeline to reach that number is October 1st. We're close, not quite there. So, but if we can reach that 70% in October, we can submit a new application. EPA actually increased the amount of funding per grant in that program. We received $600,000 the first time. That's gone up to $1 million. Regardless of the expending of the funds, we are within $50,000 of having all the funds in that grant allocated for projects that are scheduled. We're working on multiple planning activities with multiple jurisdictions at this point, as well as the actual assessments. So don't be surprised if we come back at some point with a request to do a second application to EPA for more funding.
Did I understand to say that we have plans or obligated all of the funds? We just haven't actually obligated them yet?
We've obligated them, but we haven't spent them. Yes.
So we have to
We're
actually
within,
spend
we have
to
to
70?
spend to 70, even though we're obligated to 90%.
And remind us all what entities are eligible to receive these funds, local municipalities?
Any property within Benton or Franklin County, regardless of whether it's publicly or privately owned, could access or could have a phase 1 or phase 2 environmental assessment or a regulated building materials survey conducted and paid for out of this grant for a suspected brownfield. And then in addition to that, we can also do site-specific or area-wide planning to redevelop a brownfield or brownfield area. So for example, we're doing a downtown Kennewick area-wide plan that because there are multiple brownfield locations within that area, but we're also incorporating elements of improved mobility, both biking and walking mobility through the downtown, for example. Downtown Richland, we completed their area-wide plan, and we incorporated not only an inventory of all of the brownfields, but also a parking study and strategy for that downtown area as well. So we've been able to leverage that program to be very helpful. That's it for me.
Questions for Michelle? I have one, but I'm gonna wait,
Okay.
see if anybody else does. Okay, so on the EPA grant, the brownfield you're just talking about, municipalities oftentimes are required to conduct these, so they're gonna do it one way or another. Why not let EPA pay for it? It's unusual to have this kind of public money available for a private entity to have their property assessed. I can imagine that some private entities, for whatever reason, may prefer not to know.
Yes.
Sometimes lenders require this kind of
Yes.
activity. So I can imagine in the private sector, developers who likely are bound by these kinds of studies would be the most likely private sector user. Could be others, I realize, could be anybody, but just kind of thinking that through, it's unusual to have the federal government offer money for studies for privately owned property.
And I think probably the best scenario is a piece of property where, regardless of public or privately owned, it's not going anywhere and nothing's happening because nobody, you know, everybody suspects it might have a problem, but nobody really knows if there's a problem. So, you know, if the desire is truly to redevelop it and that is the hindrance, this is a great way to get it all out on the table. And then on top of that, state ecology has its own revolving loan fund for the remediation portion of that as well.
That was my
So it
next
teased
question.
that, yeah, so it teased that back up so that if there in fact is an issue there, we set up the remediation plan is part of this grant. And then there are other funding opportunities that just tease that property up to get that fixed.
The remediation plan.
The plan.
Just the plan.
Just
not
the
work.
plan, not the work. The work is where that revolving loan fund or other things would come in. Yeah.
And the actual remediation, did you say the state has grant funds or just loan funds?
I believe they have combinations of both. It depends on the property.
Well,
and
there
the
you go, private sector property owners. Michelle's your expert. Call her up.
Know all about brownfield now.
Yeah, well, it's, we've already used it, the COG itself, so
Yep, we sure did.
that's great. Okay, where does that put us? Just action item number 9, item 9, action items. Looks like we have 2. And these were provided in the package ahead of time, correct?
Yes, they were.
Okay, I'm sure they were. Do we want to have staff speak to these first, or do we just want to move to action? Do you have a preference? Do you think we need to?
Definitely B is going to need some discussion. A is our typical tip
Pretty
amendments.
straightforward. Okay. Aaron, are you going to speak to this, or is Tanner available?
Tanner is available to speak to 9A.
Okay, well, Tanner, you have the floor for item 9A. And once Tanner has filled us in on what this is about, which is pretty standard, if anyone is inclined to motion, that would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So yeah, there's 9 tip amendments for the month of August. West Richland is adding the Keene Road pathway to the 2023 STIP. And then the rest are WashDOT projects, in which 5 of them, they're removing them from the STIP. And then the other 3, they are programming funds, they're revising from secured to planned funds.
And these are shown starting on page 22 in your packet, if you want to look at them on a little bit bigger or closer screen. Anyone have any questions for Tanner on any of these items?
Gretel has her hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Gretel, please go ahead.
So the I-82, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Oh, maybe I misread that. Well, I just been looking at these I-82 Columbia River Bridge projects. And it looks like they both have been removed. The deck rehabilitation, is that removed and it's moving somewhere else, or they've just been, we've lost that funding?
They have potential to use funding in future years, but as of right now, yeah, they're removing it from the 23 STIP because the 2024 STIP is coming up, and they might be adding it to the 2024. They didn't go into detail about if they were going to add it to that or not, but yes, it's getting, the funds are unprogrammed, but they are still planning on the project as the funding changed to planned instead of secured.
Do you know if there's any planned funding or reviews coming up for the Blue Bridge? I don't see anything on there, the Blue Bridge, and I would think that's probably our most vulnerable.
We haven't gotten any notification of that, so yeah, I'm not sure on that.
Is anyone from WashDOT on this today?
Not today.
Not today. Okay, well, I think collectively, it would be nice to push something with the Blue Bridge because it's going to affect all of the cities at some point in time if it's not maintained well.
Absolutely.
Other questions for Tanner? Tanner, would you, for my sake and others, just sort of give us the quick summary of this process by which these proposed amendments have come to us? That way we all know where they originated from, who's seen them, who's coordinated.
Yeah, so each month, jurisdictions have to submit tip amendments, and that's with a very large project change like the scope of work or pushing back the start year. So they send us a list of those projects, and then we take them to the TAC for recommendation for board approval. And then once they're approved at the board level, they submit.
I apologize, Tanner, excuse me,
Yeah.
I apologize for the interruption, but you said something there that was unclear to me, and it's really critical.
Yeah.
You said that the jurisdictions submit their required changes that are significant, substantial, and it goes to the TAC for their review. And then I think I heard you say approval.
Recommendation to
Well, I heard you say recommendation, but right after I heard the word approval, you said in board approval. I just wanted to be sure whether we're talking the TAC board or this board when you said board approval.
This board.
Okay, well, apologies again for interrupting, but this has been a
problem.
sort of a sensitive issue for a while, certainly with me, and I know with some others, about the role of the TAC, which is to advise and recommend to this board, and then this board approves. Okay, thank you for letting me get that cleared up right away.
No problem, yeah. I can, and then the process is after this board, or after each board meeting and the tip amendments are approved, we submit a package to WashDOT of the STIP reports, the State Transportation Improvement Program reports, and then they do an approval process, and then it's taken to United States Department of Transportation for approval.
Okay, so when this comes out in our read ahead materials, and we all got these, if a jurisdiction has a concern, like maybe there's a particular bridge we should be looking at more, which really probably doesn't fit directly here, but it's a future looking. But if they have a concern about any of these, what's the proper course for that jurisdiction? Should they go back to you? Should they go to the TAC? What's the next step if they want to express a concern about one of these in advance of a meeting?
I can either get the email of who submits the amendments to us from the jurisdictions, or I can coordinate that with the smittee whenever there is a problem, and make them aware of an issue, and CC the person who wants to voice their concern. Yeah, I've never really gone through that process. I'm not sure what Jeff did, but we can always figure out a plan if moving forward if that happens.
Well, I'll just offer that I've been with the COG for a number of years, and I think the board we have today is as sharp as any as I've seen, and we're having a lot more direct, insightful questions, which I think is awesome. And like you said, it's not something that's come up much in the past, so I'm taking the opportunity to educate us all at the same time, myself included, where you would like someone who has a concern about one of these to go. And it sounds like you're willing to take the phone call, but primarily to arrange or coordinate or connect them with the person that submitted the proposed change.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for giving me a minute to do that.
No
'Cause you're
problem.
right. I don't remember anybody really pushing back on any of these in the past. Gretel, please go ahead.
All right, I'll be contacting Tanner since obviously it is my issue and my concern. I got it.
Sounds great.
And to be clear, I didn't hear you expressing a concern about one of the actions on here, but rather the absence of a STIP project for the Blue Bridge, which
Yeah,
I used to live in the shadow of that bridge, and I can vouch for the fact that it could use some work.
well, and it's interesting because it's almost it's like almost the only one that is not included, and it's the one that gets the most usage, and I think would be one of the most harmful if it had to be out of commission for too long. So I think, anyways, I'll contact you, Tanner.
Sounds good.
And I think he's going to connect you with WashDOT, by the way, because it'd be their
Perfect.
project.
Yep.
Thank you.
All righty. Is anyone inclined to motion on this action item 9A for approval of the TIP amendments? TIP amendments.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the 2023-2026 TIP amendments as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval of the, myself back on the right page here, of the amendments as presented. Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Kip and a second from Gretel for approval of action item 9. This is the 2023-2026 TIP amendments. Comments, questions, concerns beyond the discussion we've already had, which was great. Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approval of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Not hearing any opposition. 9A, the TIP amendments are approved. This takes us to 9B. Reallocation of the obligated transportation alternative program and carbon reduction program funds to the city of Richland's Washington Way pedestrian access and safety improvements. If I'd known it was that long, I wouldn't have read it. Okay, Aaron, back to you.
All in one breath. Josh, you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so to set up what this action item is, so back in December, we were notified that we got funding called the Carbon Reduction Program. We got a set amount each year, and in the February board meeting, this board approved the allocation of funds for the West Richland SR 224 pathway project and the Benton City pedestrian crossing project. Since the February board meeting, West Richland has obtained funding elsewhere through the Washington State Legislature. So the funding that was allocated from the funding source through the call for projects before the carbon reduction program, so that would be the transportation alternative programs, that they received funding for that project from our call for projects, and then they received additional funding at the February board meeting. As I just said, they received different funding, so the money went back into the regional pot. The motion in front of you today is about reallocating the money that was set forth to the city of West Richland. It is now being reallocated to the city of Richland for their South George Washington Way pedestrian access safety improvements. Josh, if you can pull up the table. So you're probably wondering, why is a project so far down highlighted getting the funds? So with, you can see that SR 224 pathway, the last project highlighted in pink. That was the project that received funding elsewhere in the state from the Washington State Bike Ped Program. The next project down would have received the funding. The next eligible project was the Kennewick Keene Trail Extension. However, the city of Kennewick also received funding from the Washington State Bicycle and Pedestrian Program, so that project was fully funded. Going down to the next eligible project was the city of Pasco's Sylvester Street US 395 Bike Ped Bridge. And that project was also fully funded from the same funding source. So going down to the next eligible project was Benton-Franklin Transit's Columbia Center Mall head crossing. We approached Benton-Franklin Transit saying they were eligible to receive the funds. They were not ready to allocate their project, and they had not coordinated accordingly with the city of Kennewick. So they said we would like our project to drop off the list. So therefore, it has fallen to the city of Richland, South George Washington Way, ped access safety improvements. And as was talked about earlier in the year, we're doing a carbon reduction program call for projects for the years of, I'm not going to make sense when I'll say it, and then I'll explain it. For the years of 2022, 2024, 2025, and 2026, we're doing this. 2022 is included because we were notified of our funding after the closure of federal fiscal year 2022. So that funding has been added on to 2024. The exact dollar amounts are about 1.5 million for the urban large, just under 500,000 for rural, and 129,000 for urban small, which does include Prosser and Connell now as of the latest the latest census release.
Questions for Aaron? While I'm waiting for other questions, I have two.
Yes.
One, the project that the SR 224 pathway was 769,000 and change. The South George Washington Way is 500.
Yep.
Is that balance the extra available for us for other?
It has been recommended by the TAC that this project be funded and the rest of the funds go back into the regional pot and be put forth for the carbon reduction program call for projects.
Okay. All right. And if for some reason this GWA pedestrian access didn't fly,
yep.
I think it will, but what would be the next item on the list that we would logically go to? Would it be the 182 Broadmoor overpass?
That is correct. The total on that project shows 6.5 million. However, about 5.8 of that is for the construction phase. So they do have a preliminary engineering phase that is 700,000. So this could fund part of that.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Aaron?
I'd just like to pipe up and say, great job and congratulations to all those jurisdictions that received other forms of funding to get their projects paid for.
I was looking for a way to say, isn't this great news that we're de-obligating and re-obligating because 3 other projects got money elsewhere, but you beat me to it, so good, I agree. Alrighty, this is an action item. And I don't see a resolution or anything tied to this. So this is just a voice vote to approve this proposed action. Anyone inclined to motion now would sure be a convenient time. Again.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the reallocation of the obligated transportation alternative program and carbon reduction funds to the city of Richland, South George Washington Way, pedestrian access and safety improvements.
We have a motion for approval of action item 9B, and I think I heard a second from Commissioner Keck.
Yes,
so we have a second from Commissioner Keck from the Board of Benton. Thank you so much for stepping in there. Any comments, questions, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Or any other sign like no? Okay, sounds like it's unanimous approval of 9B, and that takes us down to item 10, which is new business. And Michelle, I'll come back to you. Any new business you're aware of?
No new business, just again, reminder, next month, lots of activity, lots of information, plan to be here until 12 o'clock. And also this will be Priyanka's last in-person meeting with us. She's headed back to Illinois tomorrow. So her participation with us will be virtual
Is something we did? or
for the
said?
fall semester. She needs to go back to school, finish her
Oh,
master's, so.
Okay, back to school.
yeah.
Good. That's probably far enough away from us. That's good. For your sake, not ours.
I wouldn't say so.
No. How much longer on your masters, if I might?
It's still May of next year.
Okay. May of next year, and then you're coming right back. Okay, well, I guess we'll see. Any new business from board members or guests, anybody? Okay. That means that we go down to comments and announcements for the good of the COG, and frankly, I think that pretty well covered it, but second call, if anybody wants to bring anything up.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a comment, please.
Please, go ahead.
I'd just like to thank the regional planner interns that we've had. I think the reports they've given have been awesome. I think the planning community has a wonderful future in front of it after listening to these 3 interns we've had, and know that they'll be in good hands. So I just want to thank them for what they've done. I think they've done an excellent job. And I hope that the support we've given them has enhanced their ability to continue their education and their planning futures.
Well, let me just second that, Skip. I think this is one of the best, if not the best team that COG has had in a long time. We're fortunate and we're appreciative. Thank you, Skip. Any other comments or announcements for the good of COG? Okay.
I'm just gonna go ahead and promote. I know it has something to do with both the COG, but next week is the Benton-Franklin Fair and Rodeo, so hope to see you all there. Don't forget.
Okay. Where's your hat?
Not until Tuesday.
Hat Tuesday. All right. Well, let's see, then that takes us to our next meeting, which is scheduled for Friday, September 15, 2023. I don't have any reason to think that date is going to change, so please mark it on your calendars. What is it they said in the 60s on Batman? Same time, same station, same bat location or something like that?
Same bat time, same bat
You
station.
gotta be like 100 years old to remember this. Same bat cave, that's right. So that's 10 a.m. on September 15th. It'll be a hybrid meeting just like this one. And not hearing or seeing any other hands, we are adjourned at 11:30-ish, 11:31. Thank you all for making time to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.